This is not psychotherapy. Dr. Wills does not have a provider-patient relationship with this guest. These are just two people talking about emotions.
Welcome to Give a Actually, with your host, Dr. Alex Wills.
This is Dr. Alex Wills with Give a Fuck podcast. I'm here with Dr. Yishan Xu. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to introduce her. She is a licensed clinical psychologist and a board-certified sleep specialist trained in the Stanford Sleep Center. And she's also the founder of Mind, Body, Garden Psychology. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Cool. I forgot to mention that she also does a podcast, which she was so gracious to have me on, called the Deep Into Sleep podcast, which talks all about sleep, psychology, how to get better sleep, and all that jazz.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Dr. Wills. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm just happy to share whatever you are interested in about emotions, sleep, and health overall. So for myself, I've been, working as a psychologist for many years, and I see a lot of different challenges in people's life. And I think over the years, it applied to my own life and to definitely help myself too. So happy to share.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled to be in the field of psychology, psychiatry, and mental health because it's like the gift that keeps on giving. Every day I seem to learn something that helps me, my friends, my family, definitely my patients. So it's like the more you give, the more you get,
Yeah, totally agree. I think I often learn with my clients together and always get inspired by them and think deeper with the knowledge and theory we all have, right? Combined with our life experience and what we learn from our clients. I think it's a very nice mutual growth process.
And I'm just launching this podcast. When did you start the Deep Into Sleep podcast and how's it going so far?
I launched my Deep Into Sleep podcast in late 2018. And it's such a pleasant journey, I would say. It grows slowly, and I got more and more listeners. The most interesting part of that is I got to connect and interview a lot of professionals in the field. I started with some sleep doctors all over the world, and then expand to psychologists, therapists, and other doctors in other fields. So it's very interesting.
And did you say you have like over 160 episodes now or something?
Yeah, we're on 155 episode recently.
Yeah, that's so great. When I was doing my training in psychiatry, we did cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And that was fascinating to learn, some really helpful things that I thought it was BS at first. And then when I applied it for myself, it actually worked. I was very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, CBTI is something I use often right now when I treat insomnia patients. It definitely works. I also apply that to Chinese population. It works very well, actually. Yeah.
Great. I'm just curious about your background a little bit, if you wanted to kind of share your origin story with us about where you came from and how you became interested in psychology in the first place and sleep and everything, and just anything you wanted to let us know.
It's a long story now, look back. I actually grew up in mainland China. So I came to America for graduate school. So I was in China, finished undergraduate for all those years, only speak Chinese. And I came to America, and that was the first time in my life be on airplane. And that was going internationally. So I still remember I was so worried I got lost in Korean when I transferred. Right? That's the first time I left my country. Until now, so I came to America because I know I want to study psychology further. My undergraduate was in psychology as well. And in China, the psychology and mental health overall was underdeveloped. When I was choosing a major, nobody knows what psychology is. But I noticed there are a lot of mental struggles among students when I was in high school because of pressure there. was very high. It was very competitive. There was only one teacher was reading some books and shared this concept of mental health to us. And that was the first time in high school I ever knew this concept of psychology and mental health. And then I got so interested in it. I think, oh, this is something I want to learn more. So I went to college. But then I realized, oh, I don't really learn enough. I need to go to a different place to learn about this more. That's how what put me here in America. And then I just learned deeper and deeper in the field of psychology and eventually go into the mental health field to do the intervention. At the beginning, I did research and then more like intervention. And when I studied psychology, I realized, the stigma around minorities, especially Asian Americans, and how family culture can impact us, right? How we talk to other people, the way we communicate impact our feelings, and how we think, our thoughts impact our feelings. So it's a lot of dots now are connecting with each other more and more and make more sense to me. And I share this knowledge to my clients, and I can witness their growth and how they get better and even recover or change their whole family relationship, family dynamic. So I think that's a very rewarding and meaningful journey for me. That's what kept me in this field still and still working in this field with a lot of passion.
That's wonderful. It's quite a long adventure for you and stuff, and it sounds like you're enjoying the ride. You mentioned that you still work with the Chinese population, and I'm curious, in Hawaii, we studied the cultural psychiatry, which is sort of its own field, but any highlights in particular of differences you notice and common things that people struggle with, maybe compared to the typical Western patient?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think there's a lot of unique struggles among Chinese or Chinese immigrants or Chinese Americans, right? Slightly different. But mostly I think family plays a big role into this, family and culture. So a lot of, especially young Asians, they are struggling with be the perfect child in the family. And in the society, they try to be the perfect minority. So there are a lot of perfectionism. There's a lot of anxiety in the process, how to please parents, meet the parents' expectation, but then get lost in their own sense of meaning, what they want to do. So there are a lot of suppression of emotions, suppression of personal needs in order to please others, either within the family or outside of the family. So that's the biggest thing I see. Not only among young people, for elders, sometimes they grow up like that, right? And it becomes a habit. So they run their own family like that too and impact their own children. Another very common thing I see among Asians, because it's very competitive. And a lot of parents, Asian families, the parents have high expectations for their children, and the way they use to motivate each other is criticism. So they use very harsh words, harsh way of expression in order to motivate other family members to try hard. So basically, a lot of Asians never think they are good enough. They don't know what is appreciation and self-credit. They just keep on pursuing next goal, next goal, next goal, and never feel like they are good enough. And that caused a lot of emotional disturbance, I think. Yeah. And also, racial discrimination. Some people, especially I think secondary generation immigrants, are more sensitive to that. So that still exists. And also the language barrier, right? Especially for the elders. That's why when I treat Chinese population, I speak Chinese, because people feel that's more comfortable if they can use their native language to communicate.
Do you speak Mandarin?
Yes, I speak Mandarin.
The only sentence I learned in Mandarin was, and I don't even know if you're going to understand, but it's 我不会汉语.
Oh, yes, I understand. Actually, it's pretty good.
You do? I figured it was the most useful thing to let people that know that I don't speak Chinese in Chinese. So that's what I
But it's also kind of funny. You speak that in Chinese, but you are trying to express, I actually don't know this language. People will get confused, but your Chinese is fine. I can understand this sentence.
谢谢. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also good to make people laugh. It's kind of a good first impression.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting in the West, the typical end result or goal of development psychologically is autonomy. At least that's what's valued.
Mhm.
But it's not the same in the East. The end goal is not really necessarily autonomy. It's more of how you fit into your family system. It's more of a collectivist. And I don't know, which one is better, which one is worse, but they're very different. And it's not necessarily in our best interest to say that, no, autonomy is the best way. This is the best end result to go to. I'm curious if you had any thoughts on that question.
I think in my clinical work, I see both extreme, right? So in the ancient Chinese philosophy, we actually prefer a balance of different things, just like the balance of the qi, of the energy, the balance of your emotions. So I often tell my clients, try to find what balance is more comfortable for you. So I don't think either way is bad or good, but yes, overall, at least Asian culture, we do value the harmony among people, among, family members, friends. So it's not like independently what I want, what I need, who I am. That is important, but not as important as, I have to keep this harmony around me. So that's somewhat like people pleasing. And so I feel like they both have their own value and they both could really benefit us and benefit our emotions under different situations. It's just to each individual person, what is a nice balance for you? Right? Because for some people, maybe they want more autonomy. And for other people, they may want more harmony. Then I think there's no right or wrong answer. There's also no fixed standard. I think as a therapist, sometimes we are trying to do is, okay, where you are, what you are comfortable. And that's part of their needs too. And let's work towards there to see whether we can help you get that balance. And for me personally, after living in America for so many years, I've been in America for possibly more than 15 years already. So I definitely noticed my own value shift. I'm more balanced towards a different direction, definitely different than when I was in China. But I think it's a healthy balance that I'm comfortable with and my family also happy about. So I think it's definitely doable. I feel like our life is, that it's, how to say, it's not fixed. It's like water, it's flowing. And then we can always adjust, adapt, and change.
By the way, I just wrote an article that's on Psychology Today about Wu Wei, the Chinese, and how using that sort of philosophy or idea as a way, as an alternative for our typical New Year's resolutions, because usually we make these New Year's resolutions and we don't keep up with them for very long and we fail. So Wu Wei, I took it to mean if you could sort of plug into the flow of nature, the flow of society, the harmony, the things that are already going, and make yourself part of that, then it's an easier way to get to where you want to go rather than try to just tough it out and do it by yourself by trying harder.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm in San Francisco Bay Area, right? We have a lot of high achievers here. Recently, I've been telling different clients about how to let it go, how to, let it be. Because when we push so hard, then that's a signal that we need the balance towards this Wu Wei concept. A lot of people worry if I really be like Wu Wei or go with the flow, that means I am not trying. I just gonna, give up, not doing anything. I cannot accept that part of myself. But a lot of time it does not necessarily go that way. I convince them that trust me, you will not allow yourself to do nothing. It's not that. What you need is you are so tensed up. You need to loose a little bit.
Yeah, that's so great. Going back to what you mentioned a little bit ago in the culture, using a lot of criticizing in the family to try to encourage people to do things, it seems like there's a lot of the use of shame or this emotion of making somebody feel shamed or guilty in order to control, manipulate, or I guess encourage what you want their behavior to be like. What have you noticed about the use of like emotions in that sort of a situation?
It's very common in Asian family, at least many Chinese families I work with. So normally it's the parents, for example, will add certain family values to the children that, I give you all these resources, you need to respect me and do what I need. If not, right, you are not a good child. Or, just criticize their personality, and it can hit to some people to the core. So that bring a lot of shame that, I have to do this. I have to be, meet this expectation, or else I should feel shameful of myself. I'm not a good person, not a good child. I'm not a good, partner or family member. So I think that's, in a way, that could be a way to manipulate people. But I think in the culture, it's become a norm, and people just use it very naturally without realizing it could also be harmful. So we still need some boundary, and still need to apply the cultural values in a cautious way. But it just, in a lot of traditional family culture, there's no boundary and people don't really think much about it. They just kind of throw this out all these years since the child was young, and then they carry this until they are older, right? Another thing is a lot of sensitive topic like their sexual development, what they want, what kind of person they want to date, and or personal needs. Some of the times you will see family members shame people on this. Basically, if their behaviors or interests are different than what the family are used to or know of, then they use harsh words to bring shame on these people. And that's, I think, how stigma of mental health come up in this culture so much.
Yeah. And, shame is so ubiquitous. We see it happening in many different cultures, many religions and cults and family systems. I'm finding that, the emotion of shame itself is a natural, pure emotion that we can experience. However, it can become toxic when you use the term shameful of myself, right? Meaning that we add a story onto it. So we have this pure, natural, although it's a painful fireball of an emotion, there's nothing really intrinsically bad about the emotion of shame. It's trying to get our attention. It's making us aware that we need to pay attention. However, if somebody tells us a story that, this emotion of shame that you have means that there's something bad about you, you need to change your behavior. You need to do what I want you to do because I'm your mom. You need to change your sexuality because this shame is telling you that your sexuality is not okay. Then we're using a good emotion as a powerful tool to try to exert control or influence over somebody else.
So I think I totally agree. I think emotions can be a double-bladed sword, right? We try not to say good emotions or bad emotions. It's really not good or bad. It's just, is that helpful to you in this situation? Is that not helpful to you in this situation? I think as psychologists or psychiatrists, we always tell clients, even so-called negative emotions, they exist for a reason, and they possibly for a really good reason. But if it's too much, you don't manage it, then of course it can cause you some challenges.
Yeah. So speaking of emotions, this podcast, Give a Fuck, is about exploring how sometimes these so-called negative emotions, or the scary, painful, sad, disappointing emotions that we oftentimes would rather not have because they're uncomfortable, they're there for a reason. They're actually good for us. And if we can figure out how they're trying to help us, that might help us not to have a problem. I'm curious if you had any stories or any situations, any emotional things that you'd be willing to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's such an important topic you are discussing. And I really hope more and more people listen to your podcast. This is a very meaningful topic. So I think I definitely can share a personal story, which is actually related to my profession, to the sleep field. One thing, I don't know how many people know this, we all dream, right? We all have this dream period as part of our normal sleep. And we actually all spend quite a lot of time in the dreaming period. But we may not know dreaming is so important in terms of its function to process emotions. Why we all have to dream is because our emotional memories are processed there in a format of dreaming. So a lot of people with trauma, and all that really need a dream. So I experienced something, let me think, 2 years ago, I think. So when other than my podcast, I had a sex education YouTube channel in Chinese. So 2 years ago, I think I just started that channel. And very early on, I shoot some videos, try to do some basic education. But the stigma in China, in Chinese culture. So certain knowledge is very new in the field, and it's possibly very different than what people normally understand. So I remember early on when I launched that channel, I got a lot of negative comments from audience in China, mostly male audience in China, against that content. They're like, this is wrong, right? Who are you, a woman, talking about this? And so that was a difficult time. I definitely experienced a lot of negative emotions. Not really shame, but more like self-doubt and angry, like a lot of anger, sadness, right? Mostly it's like I was not sure. I even double check with my different doctor friends to make sure my content is accurate. It's not a content problem, but still, even logically, it's not my mistake, but I still experience a lot of negative emotions. So around that time, of course, as a psychologist, I know certain ways to soothe myself. Like I did a lot of self-soothing, management, still difficult. I remember since I think about this so much, actually I start dreaming about this. But my dream is really amazing. I remember the dream really has a strong healing power because I'm someone sometimes can remember some of my dreams. I can remember some pieces of my dream that actually in my dream, my brain tried to reverse the experience or try to add more support and resources on top of all these matters. I think my dream kind of healed partly to help me process this negative emotion and make them more neutral. And so after several nights of good sleep like that, I feel like when I look at these emotions, I totally can understand why they are there. And I'm not afraid of them anymore. I can accept them and slowly think about more other good support and things. And eventually that turns a negative emotion to something positive. And later, when I read the research, I realized, actually, I'm not the only one because there are actually new research showing for people who dream more, they tend to be more resilient emotionally. So I was like, wow, so dreaming can really, help us sometimes.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm curious, what were some of the examples, if you can remember, of some of the mean things that were said? Like, did anything stand out? Or sometimes one of the most random things can be the most hurtful for whatever reason. But I'm curious what really struck you as the most like hurtful personally.
I think it's a lot of attack to my identity, professional identity, and basically just to criticize. So one thing stand out is people question my credential, right? So you are like a fake doctor, basically. You say you're a doctor, we don't know whether you're a doctor. And also there's certain people, they just like very simple, they just throw out, say you're saying bullshit, right? There are also people criticize me, say you are hurting people. By sharing this kind of, they call it wrong knowledge. They said I'm hurting more people who are watching this because they are learning something wrong. Yeah. So I think those really target who I think I am. As a professional, I do take a lot of honor what I do, right? I worked hard to get my credential. Also, I work day to day to help people, not harm people. And I also quote research. I try to make what I talk about legit. So I think a lot of those attacks really hit me very hard.
Yeah. I'm just imagining being in your shoes and how could that not be very hurtful? You mentioned feeling sad, having this emotion of doubt, anger. I'm curious, we think of anger as this shield emotion that's easy to get in touch with because it's empowering. But behind that shield, were there any other vulnerable, painful emotions in addition to those that you remember experiencing?
Yeah, I think there definitely some anxious feeling, fear, I guess. Fear of, I'm doing something wrong. Fear of what if they are right. Even fear of, am I making a right decision to open a channel? I remember for a little bit, I was questioning, should I do this? Right? Does this really make sense? I'm really helping people or actually I'm hurting people? So I think there's a lot of vulnerability behind that anger. Anger, of course, I was like, who are you guys? You don't know me and you're talking about all this, blah, blah. But deep down, definitely I have a lot of anxiety, fear, hurt, those all those feelings when you are misunderstood by other people like that. Yeah.
In the case that the worst came true and that, you found out that you were wrong or that you shouldn't be opening a channel, you shouldn't be doing this, or you're not really qualified. We know that none of that's true, but in the case that your fears came true, what emotions do you imagine you would have had?
If all this really became true, I think that's totally going to be very hopeless and devastated. Possibly going to be very, very severe negative emotions.
Yeah. And the reason I point that out is because usually we're not just afraid of the situation, the consequence that might happen, but we're afraid of the emotional state that we might have if our worst fears come to light, because who wants to be feeling this devastation or feeling this hopelessness? And it's almost a fear that if we have those emotions, we're going to be stuck there forever. And we're just going to feel like that for the rest of our lives, right?
Yeah, that's going to be a very horrible feeling, right? That's going to be here forever, and even more thoughts coming with it. Oh, this is going to be ruined, and my life going to be ruined. All those. I actually know some professionals in medical field give up their whole career after certain events like that, and to really, hit them to the bottom.
And you were right to have the fear because, first of all, you did. It was there for a reason. It was making you aware of some real threats, whether they were likely to happen or not. They are real threats that you needed to be aware of to make sure that you knew how to navigate going forward, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to go through these vulnerable emotions that you mentioned one by one quickly. And in your case, I'm curious, as you reflect now, what good were these emotions? How were these emotions actually there to try to help you? And so perhaps we could start with the emotion of sadness. When you were feeling sad or disappointed, what was that doing for you? What was that making you aware of? And how did that help you in your journey?
I never really think about that in such a detail. I normally put them together. I know they help me overall. First, for the sad, I think it's just normally when that happened, I am be more cautious of self-care. So I feel like the sadness is a signal that, oh, my mood is down. Then what can I do to maybe it's time to take care of myself more, to think about, what other coping strategies I can use. My brain quickly goes there.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's good. It's helpful sometimes to think in opposites. When I'm sad, I'm not happy. What am I desiring that I don't have? Maybe, like you said, self-care, maybe connection with others, maybe the support that's not there. And so that's really, so it was there for a purpose. And I like how you said it was a signal. It was like, it's a signal that things are not right. And so maybe I can take a step back and see if I can get some more self-care or other support.
Definitely. Yeah.
The next one, doubt or self-doubt. What good is doubt? Why do we have this icky emotion of doubt?
Yeah, I feel like the doubt actually helped me, double check things, right? Because I think it's very understandable when other people question you. And of course, we want to know, is this legit or not? And it's easily to get to us. So I think when I had a doubt, I really reach out to different friends, colleagues, and reach out basically to support and professional support and social support. I got a lot of validation, a lot of, support, no matter it's emotional or, evidence-based, this kind of factual support telling me, oh, this content is fine. No problem. So I think those are very valuable to me. But those are definitely triggered by the doubt. Without the doubt, I may not really reach out to so many people. If I don't reach out to so many people, I may not get the support I need.
Isn't that's so wonderful to think about this negative emotion of doubt was actually responsible for creating this motivation in you to double check and to get more support. And it also, I imagine, helped to develop resilience for you.
Yeah, definitely. I believe it's part of the process for sure.
We kind of touched on fear a little bit, but any other insights into how the fear or anxiety that you were experiencing was actually serving you and actually helped you to remain safe or something?
Yeah, overall, I think they're just, I see them as warning signs. I possibly because I'm a psychologist, I'm in this field long enough, I help my clients to be more aware. So I think I have a higher level of self-awareness of my emotions. So when I feel anxious, when I feel fear, I definitely do a lot of self-talk, right? Try to help myself after I get all the support, evidence, validation, and I try to adjust my own self-talk to help myself. So I think all this just fear, anxiety, just to make me more active, more motivated, because naturally all these emotions, including sadness, they make me want to lay there, do nothing, right? Just ruminate. But the other part is motivate me to really actively do something about it.
And then finally, what about that emotion of hurt or pain, the aspect of those emotions that can be quite painful? What good is that? Because we all want to avoid pain. Who wants to be experiencing pain? It's the opposite of pleasure. It's pretty awful. And most of us, well, it's very tempting to want to do anything we can to get away from it and avoid it.
Yeah, nobody wants to feel hurt for sure. And that's very unpleasant feelings. For me, I think I did a lot. When that happened, that helped me understand, okay, I don't like it, but I also realize I cannot get rid of it. So I think when it's there lingering, it helped me practice how to coexist with it, basically. How I can still do my day-to-day thing when I feel this hurt. And when I calm down more, when things get better, I try to think, okay, can I do some self-compassion to myself? Or like it's understanding, like I totally understand why I feel hurt. I have every reason to feel hurt when, I see those messages. And then if this is not my fault, what can I do to help myself to accept this hurt, but not let it control my life? So I guess I'm more problem solving in a way and more actively coping and possibly cope with all these things faster. But acceptance is a big piece, especially for feelings like hurt.
Back then when it was happening, do you feel like you were as good as you are now about automatically accepting like, oh, I'm having these negative emotions? Or was it a bit of a struggle to even admit to yourself that you were hurt or that you were sad? Because we often don't want to admit, and we kind of try to deny that we have these vulnerable emotions because they might make us feel weak. They're obviously painful and unpleasant. So there's a lot of motivation to avoid them. Is this something that you've had to cultivate over the years, or are you more of a natural with it?
I believe nobody's going to be natural about this. I believe over the years, I definitely got better and better to be able to cope it faster. But I have to admit, whenever this kind of thing happened, it's going to paralyze us possibly for a while, shock us for a while, and denial, of course, going to be there. And all this happened like just one morning. I opened my eyes. I was like, huh? Overnight, something happened. And so it's totally a shock. And definitely, I remember put me down for quite several days. So it was a struggle. With all this knowledge, with all this, theories I know, it took me a while to really get to it because the emotions have to fly around, right, crazily for a while. And then I start gather some attention and effort and energy to be able to look at it. Okay, now let me look at this and to think about what to do.
I don't know about you, but I find it helpful to think of overwhelm as its own emotion. Or I guess sometimes emotions can be overwhelming. And I used to always feel like being overwhelmed is a very bad thing, and you need to fight to make sure that doesn't happen. However, thinking about it as an emotional state or a temporary emotion and making it not a bad emotion or a negative emotion can actually be quite helpful, because overwhelm communicates to us that the situation is too much. I need more time to process. And so I'm curious about I'm imagining you learned all about this overnight and it just kind of blew up suddenly. And so I'm imagining that you were having quite a bit of overwhelming emotions.
Yeah, I think that's a good reminder. It somehow just slipped my mind. I possibly did not pay attention to overwhelming feeling first. But that is what come to my mind. I think definitely got overwhelmed, at least for that day, because it's just so much. It's basically a negative information got exploded overnight. So I think back, I definitely had a short period of avoidance. Avoid all these platforms, avoid all this video creation process, definitely for a little bit. And I think it's because all these emotions are overwhelming and all this stuff are overwhelming.
Right. And is that kind of your go-to, is to avoid for a little bit? That's a pretty common way that we can sort of, I guess, temporarily get a break from these unpleasant emotions, to just try to avoid anything that could bring them up.
Yes, I think depends on how intense. If they're very intense, I tend to, just avoid for a little bit, also as self-protection, right? I need to cut down the income of the negative messages, and then maybe do something to chill myself first. And it happened during a weekday. So I still have to attend to my day-to-day work and life. So I don't really have time to think about that too much. So I put it aside a little bit. But, the problem is at night when you try to sleep, when you have time to rest, and you're going to have to face this.
Right. You seem like you've come a long way and you've grown a lot. I'm curious, how did that situation and these emotions help you grow professionally, personally, and interpersonally?
Do you mean this event or overall?
This event, but anything that kind of comes to mind overall as well.
So take this event as an example. I think after that, I grew a lot, and this event gave me a really good lesson to help me connect what I learned professionally to personal life. I realized, this is resilience, right? I realized I can still do what I want, and I don't have to care so much about other people's words. Since then, my channel just grew very well. Now I have a lot of followers, and there are, and also a lot of good messages, very encouraging messages, sharing how much they learn and how many things they never know before. So look back, it helped me realize, difficult times, difficult emotions, if you are able to see the positive part of that, and you don't see that just as a threat, or invalidation, you see it kind of like you can see good things from it and learn, grow from it, then good things may come. You will not regret. So look back, I really actually appreciate that part of my journey. And I actually appreciate all those negative emotions.
Yeah. I imagine today, if someone were to write negative things and negative words to you, it wouldn't have the same emotional intensity.
Yeah, I still get negative messages here and there, not that many anymore. But yes, right now I can be more chill. It does not really impact me that much. I'm very chill. I'm confident. So if I don't like the message, I just delete it. If I think the message is reasonable in its own way, I reply or just leave it there. So I think I can handle it much more peacefully right now.
In other words, the connection that I'm kind of seeing is that by originally giving a fuck about it or getting in touch with these negative, painful emotions and validating them and accepting them, allowing them to kind of process, now when those same things happen, you still have those emotions come up, but they're smaller fucks and they're not taking over. You don't have to try to avoid them. You don't have to shut down or try to fix them. You just allow them to sort of come and go, and they no longer have control like they did to shut you down for a couple of days or whatnot.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't think they have those kind of power to me anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else that you wanted to add or to mention that came up for you while we were sort of going through this? I think this was such a really, really cool example to work through.
Yeah. No, I just think, the more we understand emotions, the less we are afraid of it, right? Once we are not afraid of it, then we are the one has power, has control. And I think that's in psychology, a lot of time what we are trying to do is to empower ourselves from inside to out. So I feel like inside of ourselves, always the core, what we can work internally. And like you said, understand emotions, process our emotions can help us build those kind of internal strengths and eventually the resilience.
That's very well said. I use the term Emotiaphobia about the irrational fear of emotions. And when we realize that we don't have to be afraid, even the example that stands out to me is that you had the fear that something really bad would happen. And then you would end up having these emotions of hopelessness and feeling devastated. And yet, even those emotions were there to help you to pay attention. And so if we realize that we don't have to be afraid of our own emotions, that they're always trying to give us wisdom, then they no longer have to be a problem.
Yeah.
Anything going on? You are doing your podcast these days. You are doing the Mind, Body, Garden, Psychology. Any events, announcements, things that you're working on or things coming up with your podcast?
So we are working on, I have worked on an insomnia treatment course online. Yeah, so it's on our website. So I'm trying to be able to reach out to more patients with insomnia to help them sleep better. That's one thing we've been trying, and we may have other courses later. And this year, we are actually launching a new English YouTube channel. So try to, use this video type of format to share knowledge about sleep, sexual health, and mental health in general. It's not only me doing that. It's like many of our therapists and we do it together to share all this information. So I'm very excited about that.
And it's the Deep Into Sleep podcast. And where can people find out other information if they wanted to follow you or learn about what you're doing?
Yeah, so people can just come to our website at mindbodygarden.com. And my podcast is Deep Into Sleep. The new YouTube channel is Ask Dr.Yishan. And almost all those links are on our website, including our courses, all the free resources we are providing. People can find them all there.
Dr. Yishan Xu, thank you so much for coming on. It's been really cool. And I hope to talk with you again soon.
Thank you, Dr. Wells, for the invitation.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. This is Dr. Alex Wills with Give a F Actually. Make sure to check us out on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you get your podcasts.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out the merch store. RadicalEmotionalAcceptance.com. Bye.
Bye.